Senior's 3 children. I've got my brother Dick, he's 5 years younger. My sister Angela, we call her Angel. She's 3 years younger than I am, or 2 years younger. Ever since I was a young man being raised in the Bronx in what I knew as an Italian-American neighborhood, I always felt there was something special about the kind of Italian that I was, because I remember many times my father speaking a language to his mother, and in the presence of other Italians, where they would turn to each other and say, boy, they're really speaking that crazy dialect, Albanese. And I grew up thinking that I was from Italy, because I knew, or at least I was from a family that was from Italy, because I knew my father was born in a town near Naples, which we know as Greci, in the province of Avellino. And he was born there in 1913. He came to America in 1929. And my mother comes from a town on the east side of Italy, because Naples is on the west side, and it's a town that's just above Bari called Giovinazzo. So growing up in the Italian-American experience in America, I felt there was something different about my father's side of the family, because it had to do with the language. As I got older, I remember in the late 40s and 50s, before we get to me being too much older, as we went to picnics in Orchard Beach in the Bronx and Pelham Bay in the Bronx, inevitably my father would hear someone speaking his so-called dialect. And he'd go up and start chatting with them. And as soon as they started talking the Albanian language, which we now know as our Bresh, the old Albanian language which survives in Italy today in 51 Albanian-speaking villages in Italy today, they would grab each other, kiss each other, and I still have many recollections of how my father was so deliriously happy that he met people that spoke this old Albanian language, and their first words would be two Albanian words. My father would say, Gjaku I shprishu, as he kissed them and hugged them. And Gjaku is the word for blood in Albanian, and shprishu means dispersed. The Albanian people have had a history, as we know, having done work in the Balkans since I was a congressman with my wife Shirley, of dispersal. They've been a people who have been chased out of their country by the Turks in the 15th century. And after 450 years of Ottoman occupation, World War I comes, and they still had problems with Greeks and Slavs, the Serbs, the Macedonians, and then later on with communists. So that they've been a people who have been kept off balance for the last 600 years. But that word, Gjaku I shprishu, those two words, meant a lot to me, because it showed me that my father was reaching out to his path, that he found the people from his town that, like himself, were again dispersed. And in 1929, my father's dispersal was as a result of economics, not political repression, because Italy did provide an asylum for the Albanian people since the year 1461, which is when they went to Greci, and then most Albanians came when the Turks overran Albania in 1488. So you're talking about some 600 years. But this dispersal was an economic one, because during the Great Depression, which hit Italy as well, maybe worse than the United States, there was no work, was no jobs. And I remember my father saying that his cousins, the females, two of them, had to be put in a convent because they had big families and they couldn't afford to feed these individuals. They were starving. And one of them ended up in America, and we know her today. She just died a few years ago, as Sister Cecilia Tosi. And Tosi is the name of my grandmother, Angelina Tosi. My grandfather was Nicola Dioguardi. And we'll talk about that later on today, because we're here in Canton to see their descendants. And why are they here? And why are we here? Well, it was about a year or two ago that I got a call from Betsy Sabaid. She is one of my third cousins, and she has Albanian heritage she'll talk about in a while, and we'll see her during the day. And she had seen an article in National Geographic when Shirley and I brought them to Italy to show them, and they were in disbelief that there were so many Albanians in Italy, because they wanted to focus on the Kosovo War in 1999, and they were thinking they'd cover the refugees that were coming from Kosovo to Italy, but didn't know there was an indigenous population of Albanians from 600 years ago. So that was the first outreach to me that connected us to Canton, because Betsy's family came to Canton before she moved to California. And then about maybe a year later, I get an email from Bob Peterson, who is a Danish-American who married one of my cousins, Dina, and we'll see her later on. And he did a great job in tracing the roots of the people from Grecci back as many as 10, 11, 12 generations, 300 to 400 years, because being an expert in computers, he managed to put on a database all the birth and death records and marriage records from Grecci, so we have it. And it was in talking to him, and he sends me a 13-page listing of my ancestors from Grecci on my father's side, going back, 300 or 400 years, and I gave it to my brother Dick and my sister Angel, and that's where we began thinking that, we need to connect. Here we connected with the past on a piece of paper. Why don't we go and meet the cousins that we know are in Canton, Ohio? So we're here today.